This is lesson 2.4, more on experimental design. Today we're going to talk about other things we can do to make our experiments even better. So the first thing we're going to talk about is single blind versus double blind. So an experiment in which subjects do not know what treatment they have received, this is what we call single blind. Now, this is important because what happens when somebody knows what treatment they're in? Well, they might be biased and their responses could change. For example, if somebody knows that they're getting the highest dose of a medication, they might think, oh, I should be getting better. So their response could be different than, let's say, somebody who knows they're in the control group and they don't think that they should be doing any better, so they don't react like the other groups do. Another example would be our temperature in the classroom example. If somebody knows that they're in the 65-degree room and they really don't like cold, they might purposely bomb the exam just so they don't have to be in another cold room again. So if possible, it's nice to make an experiment single blind so that the individuals in the experiment, they don't know what treatment group they're in. Now, this isn't always possible. For example, the temperature in the classroom experiment, they would know what temperature the classroom is. You can't blind them to which temperature room they're in. So it's not always possible, but if you can, it's a good strategy to have that in your experiment. All right, so there's a single blind, and that means that there should also be a double blind. So a double blind experiment right here is when both the individual and the person measuring the response don't know what treatment was given to the subject. Okay, so if the individuals don't know and the people measuring the response don't know, then this is a double blind experiment. Now, this is important because if the person who is measuring the response knows who is in which treatment group, that could bias their measurement of the response. For example, if there is a new cancer treatment and some subjects are given the new treatment and the other group, they're just given a placebo or they're not given anything. Now, when somebody is measuring the response, they might notice a slight difference. And if they see that, oh, they're in the treatment group, they're actually getting new medication, they would look at that difference and they might see it as significant. However, if they see that, oh, this person is actually just in the control group, they're not getting any treatment, then when they see that slight difference, they might think, oh, it's not a big enough difference, I'm just not going to count it. So the person measuring the response variable can be biased too when they measure the response. So if those people don't know who's in which treatment group and the subjects don't know who is in which treatment groups, that's when we call it double blind. And if it's only one of those two and not both, that's what we call single blind. Now, some people might think, why don't we just give everybody the new cancer treatment and see if they get better? Isn't that a better way to determine if it's working? Actually, no, because you would need another group to compare the treatment group with to make sure that it really just is the new treatment that's helping these people and it's not something else that's happening. For example, if the air quality just happened to be better that month or anything else happening outside that could affect their health, we want to make sure that we can tell that it's the new treatment that's helping the individuals and not an extraneous variable. So because of that, we need to have what's called a control group. So what the control group does is that it allows us to have a group to compare with. And hopefully everything else we're using direct control, so everything else is the same, except one group has the treatment and one group doesn't. So the group that doesn't, that's what we call the control group, and that's what we use to compare the treatment groups with. Now lastly, suppose we want to test an herbal supplement to determine if it aided in weight loss. Why would it not be beneficial to have two groups in the experiment, one that takes a supplement and a control group that takes nothing? Well, what could happen is the group that has the herbal supplement, they might be thinking, oh, I'm taking an herbal supplement to help my weight loss. Maybe I should be eating healthier. Maybe I should exercise more, drink more water. They might just change their behavior because of that. And mentally they think, all right, I should be losing weight because I'm taking something. However, the control group, they're not taking anything. So they might not be thinking about their weight. They might act differently just because they aren't getting any treatment. So what can we do to remedy this problem? Well, we can give one group the supplement and give the other group a pill that looks just like the supplement. Same size, color, taste, smell, etc. But it doesn't actually contain the herbal ingredient. So this is called a placebo. And a placebo is kind of like a sugar pill, that idea. It's basically something that looks exactly like the actual treatment, but doesn't have the active ingredient. All right, and we've heard of things called like the placebo effect, which is even the act of taking something psychologically, we're already changing. So our bodies can change just because of that placebo effect. All right, let's try some examples here. So example 1 says, a farm product manufacturer wants to determine if the yield of crop is different when the soil is treated with 3 different types of fertilizers. 15 similar plots of land are planted with the same type of seed, but are fertilized differently. At the end of the growing season, the mean yield from the sample plots is compared. So the first question is, what are the experimental units? So the experimental units are what's being experimented on, and in this case, it would be the plots of land. All right, and factors. We only have one factor here, which is our explanatory variable, the fertilizer. So I'm going to write type of fertilizer. All right, and our response variable, what are we measuring at the end? We want to see the mean yield from the plots. So I'm going to say the yield of crops is my response variable. And how many treatments? Well, my explanatory variable is type of fertilizer, and I have 3 of those. So I'm going to have 3 treatments for the 3 different types of fertilizers. All right, now the next question is, why is the same type of seed used on all 15 plots? Well, the reason why is because we don't want one plot to have, tomatoes, the other one to have corn, because what if they just grow differently? So because of that, I'm using direct control in order to not have that as an extraneous variable, to not have the type of crop be confounded with the fertilizer. All right, and the next question is, what are other potential extraneous variables? Well, any variable that affects the response variable that isn't the explanatory variable is an extraneous variable. So things like amount of water, amount of sunlight, potential bugs, all of these things could affect my yield of crop, but is not the type of fertilizer. So those are my extraneous variables. All right, and does this experiment have a placebo? No, I don't think so. I don't know if there's a placebo fertilizer out there, and I don't know if that would make any difference to plants. So I'm going to say no. There are no treatment groups with no fertilizer. And I spelled fertilizer wrong, but you guys know what I'm talking about. All right. So same example. This time, instead of having 3 different types of fertilizers, there's 2 types of fertilizers, and they're 20 plots of land, 10 plots along a river and 10 plots away from the river, and they're planted with the same type of seed. Now, there's a difference between soil that's next to the river and soil that's away from the river. So because the experimenter can't control that, all right, so I'm answering that question, can the experimenter directly control the types of soil? No, the soil is what the soil is. What we can do is we can block for the type of soils. Okay. So if we have, a river and we have our land here, and let's say there are 10 plots here and 10 plots here, what I can do is I can do an experiment within each of the blocks. All right. So if I have 10 here, I know that's not 10, but pretend, and I can just randomly say, all right, I'm going to randomly pick a few of these, and these are going to get type 1 fertilizer. And then I'm going to pick the others to have type 2. And that way I can compare just the fertilizer within that same type of soil, and type of soil doesn't become a confounding variable. And I do the same thing with the soil that's away. And then I can go ahead and do an experiment within that block to see how the fertilizer reacts. All right, why don't you guys try example 3? Go ahead and pause the video, and once you're ready for your answers, go ahead and press play again. All right, so here are your answers for example 3. So the experiment units were the cake mixes. This is what's being experimented on. The factors, there were 2 factors, type of pan and type of oven. For the response variable, this was specifically looking at how evenly the cake baked. And lastly, the treatments, there were 6 of them, as you can see, with the aluminum pan in the electric oven and gas oven, the glass pan in the electric oven, and then again in the gas oven, and then the plastic pan in the electric oven, and then the gas oven. All right, and that's it for lesson 2.4.